Right, good evening everybody and welcome to what is your plan committee. Right members, minutes of the last meeting, is your wish I sign as a true and correct record? Thank you. Apologies for absence, please.
Apologies received from councillors Jonathan Harris, Ken Ritchie and Malcolm Longridge.
Okay. I think the rest of us are here, aren't we? Yeah. Members' interest, disposable interest.
Round up with the first one.
Yes.
Yeah. Would you like now?
No, you're disclosing.
An interest in the first one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you better say what the interest is.
On the applicant.
Right, so you're an applicant of the first one, so you'll be removed. Right. Councillor Irving Swift.
Yes, the last item is in nothing else, but I spoke with the monitoring officer and I can take part of in the debate.
Thank you. There was another hand went up, I think, wasn't there? No? Sally and Sue? Right, party whipping arrangements. Members of the public, that means that we don't get together with groups of people and decide how we're going to vote beforehand. There are no applications withdrawn or delegated, but there's a bit of housekeeping. If the fire alarm bell rings, please go out orderly the way you come in. Please switch your mobile devices to silent, because it costs you £5 if it's a dodgy ring and £10 if it's a good ring, to the chairman's charity. So you don't want to pay that, do you? No, I don't either. Speakers have 3 minutes. After that you'll be asked to wind up. That is the only opportunity for you to speak, so I'm sure you won't interrupt during the rest of the debate. No clapping, hissing, cheering, booing, standing, waving your arms, but you don't look like that sort of bunch. You do have them in sometimes. You'll see officers talking at the same time as perhaps when you're talking, which looks incredibly bad manners. They're trying to get an answer for the point you're making, or trying to talk about the point you're making, so that the meeting can carry on. Okay, we go on to the first application. Thank you. The first application, which is in West London, is 0119.
Thanks, Chairman. The property is, as you see, a listed building. It's a listed pub close to the centre of the village of West London. Historically, the pub has had a number of signs attached to it. This is the latest application for listed building consent for attaching the latest series of signs to it. You'll see the Conservation Officer has been in negotiations, discussions with the applicant and provided support in terms of the submission of the application and advice in terms of assessing it and its historic impact on the setting of appearance of the listed building. Following that advice and following consideration of the application, the Conservation Officer decided that the proposal is acceptable in listed building terms, and accordingly is recommending the application be approved subject to the conditions set out in the report.
Thank you, Eamon. Local member is myself, and I don't have a problem with it, so I shan't say any more on it. Councillor Irving Swift.
Yes, this application is in front of us because the applicant is a member of the council, but frankly I don't see any reason to object, so I would propose we go with officer advice.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson.
Yeah, I actually live in West Haddon and I have no issue with this. It's perfectly reasonable to change the signage every now and again, I would have thought.
Right, so are you seconding it?
I will.
You're seconding it, okay? You indicated you want
I was going to second it too, but that's okay.
You wish to speak? Okay, if there's no other comments, we have a proposal the application be approved, which has been seconded. All those in favour show.
10.
That's unanimous. The application is approved. Right, the next application is in Wheaton or Dodson. It's on the borders of both of it, so it's 0291. Over to you, officers.
Thanks, Chairman. For those members who were around will recall, as you'll see in the report, this site was the subject of a previous application that was refused on the grounds of conflict with policy and not satisfying the advice of the planning policy section of the council. Since that time, the applicants have engaged both with the local community and with planning officers, such that there has been a change in circumstances whereby officers consider that on balance we can support the application. Well, you'll see from the location plan that the site itself lies outside, just a bit of location plan. Lies out squarely outside the confines of the village. However, it's hemmed in by the canal conservation area to the eastern side and the west coast main line to the south. There is an agricultural field to the north, and that again is also hemmed in by the canal conservation area. The application is an outline application with all matters reserved with the exception of the access into the site, which will be straight off the A45. And you'll see the various comments from the consultees that they have raised no objections to the application or are requesting various contributions to support the impact of the development, both in terms of health, education, but also in terms of affordable housing. Turning to some of the main changes in circumstances, we have, since the last application was considered, an up-to-date housing needs survey, which the applicants have demonstrated the application is capable of addressing the needs identified in that survey. In addition to that, we have the emerging local plan, which allows for some development adjacent or adjoining the confines of the village in exceptional circumstances or where there are specific circumstances that address specific concerns. So whilst there's a degree of conflict with the policies in terms of being outside the confines of the village, on balance we are recommending the application be approved subject to the Section 106 agreement to secure the various contributions set out in the report and the conditions also set out in the report. Should I also point out, as you'll see in the late representations, there is reference to an updated illustrative plan, which my understanding is has been produced to demonstrate that the site is capable of being developed in a manner which will accommodate the various housing needs required on site, but also to provide open space and sustainable urban drainage within the site. So according to that, Chairman, no more to say.
Thank you, Raymond. We have two speakers, Mr. Sancho from the Parish Council for a start.
I think I've spoken to you on 2 occasions before about this application, and I just want to express the Parish Council and residents' unanimous support for this development at Dodford Wall. Parish Council is delighted that the case officer has now recognised changing circumstances within the parish of Wheaton and has recommended that this application be approved. Just in case any of you still harbour doubts, I've come again to reinforce the residents' views, and we trust that councillors will agree with the case officer. The recent housing needs survey well illustrates residents' long-held view of the need for affordable housing options to bring young families to the village and bungalows to enable older residents to downsize. Approval of this application will be a boost to the High Street community. We welcome the contribution towards our excellent and popular first school and towards improvements at Jubilee Field, which is the only sports field suitable for older children and adults in Wheaton. Can I be cheeky and suggest that future residents of affordable housing and bungalows would probably appreciate a bus shelter at the Railway Bridge bus stop nearest to the entrance of the site, if the Highways Department would allow. Approval of this application will reassure residents that, with hard work and negotiation, planning policy can respond to local needs and wishes. Please support this application.
Thank you. Mr. Hatcher, who's the applicant? Or speak on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Committee. Following refusal of a similar scheme last year, as outlined within the officer's report, there has been a number of changes in circumstances that are material to this particular proposal. At the time of the previous application, the housing needs study for Weedon from 2015 was considered to be out of date, and its identified need for significant affordable housing could not be given weight by your officers. In addition, the local plan part 2 and policies relevant to this proposal were at an early stage and similarly could only be afforded limited weight. Policy RA1 in particular provides support for new housing outside the confines of primary service villages such as Weedon in exceptional circumstances, including where a proposal would meet local housing needs as identified within an up-to-date housing needs study. Since last year, a new housing needs study has been completed showing an even greater level of local housing need within Weedon than the previous study. Furthermore, the local plan has advanced through independent examination and final modifications are now being agreed between the council and the local plan inspector prior to a final stage of consultation, after which the plan will be adopted. Having attended the local plan examination myself, it was clear that changes being sought by the inspector to policy RA1 are to make the policy more flexible to support schemes such as this, which can genuinely meet an identified local need for housing. As such, it is clear that the substance of the most relevant policy applicable to this proposal will remain supportive once adopted, and this scheme is fully compliant with it. Whilst it is common for any proposal to be consistent with some policies of the development plan, but in conflict with others, a balanced approach must be adopted against the development plan as a whole. In the report, it's the officer's professional judgment that on balance, the social, economic and environmental benefits of the proposal demonstrably outweigh any harm arising from the development being outside, albeit adjacent to the confines of the settlement. Exceptional circumstances have been demonstrated consistent with policy RA1 that would support this approach in this particular case, in that the provision of both market and affordable housing will directly meet the identified needs of the local community. We have agreed with the parish council and the council's affordable housing officer that the 19 affordable houses will be delivered will be of types most in need within the local community, with a focus on smaller 1, 2 and 3 bedroom flats, bungalows and houses. We have also agreed that the open market homes will be aligned to local needs, with a third of these being made exclusively available for sale in the first instance to those with a local connection to the village. The latest housing needs survey demonstrates a significant need for both affordable and smaller housing to meet the needs of younger people, families and more elderly who are in desperate need to downsize to more appropriate accommodation whilst remaining within their own community. These needs can be met to a large degree by this proposal on a site that has been consistently supported by the local community as being suitable for such purposes, including when it was identified as a preferred housing site in the emerging neighbourhood plan. The parish has continued to support these proposals, as has the local community, with no objections being raised by anyone. Similarly, there are no objections from any statutory consultees, and any previous concerns raised by the planning policy officers has now fallen away. As such, I respectfully request that members support this proposal and grant planning permission. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Local member, Councillor Smith.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. Fantastic news, I think, for Weedon, as was identified as seemed to be a good spot within the neighbourhood plan, which didn't come forward ultimately. 4 new bungalows, that was fantastic. I support this wholeheartedly. I have a few worries that we won't see the affordable housing, but we're being told it's going to happen. So I support this, and I hope the committee will as well. And I propose that we go with officers in that.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Council? Goose, 3 hands went up. I'll take Councillor Charlton.
Thank you, Chairman. As the Council's champion of its Part 2 Settlements and Countryside Local Development Plan, I'm supportive of this. It does fit with the modified policies. I sat through the examination, as did our speaker, and really the council had no great objection to the suggestion that those policies be eased a bit, and we could see the need, and that's further demonstrated by the housing needs survey here. So yes, I'm fully supportive of this application.
Thank you. Although two more hands went up, were they just purely to second it, or would you like to speak? Councillor Erling Swift, then Councillor James.
Yes, Councillor Smith did say something that he was a bit mindful about the affordable houses. So could we have the insurance that if the mix is changed, it could come back in front of committee as it will not be as per the agreement? Because that would give us the insurance that if that will not, we will have to reconsider it. My second point, I have two other points. My second point is also with the library. As you know, I would, because with the county council and the library, could we make sure that it could be for the good of the widow, and I know they don't have a library, but I don't know how we could specify that it goes to Daventry or whatever the widow residents use as a main library for the £9,000 of section 106. And finally, on the plan, we have two lines, so I hope that the red line goes just on that side and do not encompass the whole. Yes, so that is quite, it's up, because last time it was the old side, and that we want to make sure that stay at the bottom side.
Okay.
That's the correct one.
Maria, would you want to answer those?
I'll go backwards. So that's the red line for the application, and that's land also in the ownership of the applicant.
Yeah.
So that other thing was there must be something else on that other plan. The library contribution will be up to the library providers to determine how to do that, and then if they satisfy the terms of the agreement, that's how we send it. We do it to council automatically. That's for them to determine it when they claim that. So we can only do what we can do on that one. And the answer is yes. This is the application before you. And the Section 106 heads of terms will be complied with. If there was any application to amend or in an application to come on, that would come back to committee.
Okay. Councillor James, then Councillor Sells.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, last year when this came up, I supported that. In fact, I think I proposed that it be approved at that time, but it was unsuccessful. But today it comes back with the benefit of an up-to-date housing needs survey, which proves the point that many said last year. So, I'm more than happy with this application. It provides much needed affordable housing, and affordable housing of a suggested mix, which fits in with most of those needs. So, all in all, I think this is, it would be difficult to refuse this one. So I'm going along with officer's advice to approve the application.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, like the other members have suggested that I'm also in favour of this. I was disappointed when it was turned down last year, but I think it looks like we hopefully come to the right conclusion this evening if we can approve it. I do have one question which I'm not quite clear about, and it's the item at the top of page 40 about access, considering when or if the haulage business is already on the site, whether it ceases or carries on, and there will be some road amendments. So if I'm reading this correctly, if the haulage business carries on, there will be some little amendment to the highway to enable a right turn to be made more safely. But if there is no haulage business, that wouldn't happen, and therefore I assume that the junction would remain as it is, just an open junction with no diversions or markings or anything like that. Is that the case? And is that, and is the I'm just wondering if the reason would be reduced traffic flows, and therefore it wouldn't be deemed necessary without the extra heavy loads turning in and out.
Well, you're dealing with an application for residential development. I would maintain that in granting that and implementing that, the haulage business would go in any case. But as a means of development races, there is a condition requiring the haulage business to cease. If they don't implement the permission, the haulage business will continue to operate from there. I think it's only in a very rare circumstance and only if a new application came in for mixed development, would be a scenario where you had the haulage and residential existing side by side. So,
Right, but
so by implication, the haulage business goes if members are meant to approve this application and this application is then implemented.
Right, I think we're not quite on the point, or maybe I'm not explaining my point. There seems to be a suggestion here that there will be amendment to how the road works in certain circumstances, which I don't necessarily see that happening with just the development. So my concern is there will be some increased traffic flow. I know we have the bypass, which has presumably reduced the flow on the high street. Therefore, is no amendment to the junction required?
Not currently.
You don't see that it's required?
Not currently.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Evans-Webb?
Yes, Councillor Dabbs just said we came to the wrong conclusion last time, and I think that is not an appropriate comment to make. We came to a conclusion, he might disagree, but that doesn't mean it was the wrong conclusion, because we were going against R1 with a need survey was not up to date. And now we are with a good application, and secondly, we have a much better mix of affordable houses with satisfies the village. So I think we have to be mindful when we speak at committee to make judgment, wrong conclusion or whatever. When we take a decision, we have to be mindful of the language we use.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah.
I would still welcome Councillor Dabbs' opinion, although it's completely different from yours.
Yes.
And that's what life's about, getting different opinions from people.
But you know,
Right, we propose the application be approved, which is seconded. All those in favour, please show. Unanimous. Unanimous. The application is approved. The next two applications we'll take together, but we'll vote on them separately. So in other words, the Speaker will talk about both of them together. The committee will talk on them both together, but I shall have a proposer and a seconder for both applications. So over to you, officers.
Daventry Town is identified with the joint core strategy which was approved back in 2014 as being the appropriate location to provide a sub-regional centre just below Northampton. So it's identified strategically as an area to accommodate growth, both in terms of housing but also in terms of employment. The emerging local plan, which comes down off the joint core strategy with the Part 2 local plan, specifically allocates the area identified in red for employment use, and that has been through the examination and therefore carries quite considerable weight, although it's not formally adopted yet. Yes, you can just look at that one. So, in terms of the application, I mean, the application before us is a hybrid application, which means that we have two parts to it. Site A is a detailed application to provide a specific building for a local employer who is wishing to basically consolidate their operations within Daventry, their storage and distribution operations within Daventry, to complement their existing manufacturing base, which is also based in Daventry. By consolidating that, they'll free up existing warehouse space elsewhere within the town. So that's the hybrid application. So you've got full details before you of what that building's going to look like, how it's going to be accessed, site levels, how the site's going to be developed. The second part of the application is an outline application known as Site B, which is the remainder of the site, and in effect The applicants don't know how that's going to be developed at this stage in terms of the numbers of units, but it will provide smaller units, up to 3 or 4. But that will be dependent on the market, how the market develops, etc. So at this stage you don't have the details of that. What you're being asked to do is to agree the principle of development under this one application. So combined, the application asks you to provide permission for the detailed development of Area A and allow the principle of Area B. Now on this drawing you'll see the amenity area, which is the subject of the next application, DA 367. That amenity area was granted as part of the Apex 3 development, which you'll see just to the left-hand side there. That was granted by the West Northampton Development Corporation for 3 large units. The largest of which was the Gardman unit, which, as you all know, suffered extensive damage and had to be demolished following a fire, so that's a vacant open site. As part of that development, strategic landscaping was provided along the western side of the site, providing public access to an amenity area, which is the area outlined in blue. And all of that is developing at the moment and is providing a degree of visual mitigation for Apex 3. But in designing this proposal for the applications before you, the applicants felt the need to take on board the comments of Braunston Parish Council and others about the prominence of the site on the edge of the town, and provide some more visual mitigation in terms of landscaping and earth modelling. That combined with sort of looking at the detailed design of the buildings and site levels would combine to mitigate the impact, the overall impact of the development on the surrounding landscape. So the amenity area serves 2 purposes. It will provide a space for which they will be able to move material from area A and B and remodel the amenity area, plant that up, but also as part of the current application for area A and B, there will be provision for new access or cycleway just running again along the western side of area A and coming through between area A and area B to connect into the existing public footpath network. I should also point out that along the bottom, which is the eastern side of the site, runs a bridleway, quite a well-used bridleway that provides connection into Middlemore residential estate and the cycle network beyond. And that will be enhanced as part of this development as well. Is that the detailed plan? Well, you'll see on these cross sections there is going to be a lot of earth moving and a lot of changes in levels across the site. Essentially to try and sit the building down as best as possible to mitigate its visual impact. And as I say, looking at the proposal, it essentially involves cutting in so it sits down relative to the Gardman site, but sits slightly higher relative to area B. The combination of design, landscaping, etc., in our view, is judged to be acceptable and on balance, given the strategic importance of seeing growth in Daventry in terms of employment. We are quite happy to recommend the application be approved. You'll see that the Highway Authority have asked for a Section 106 agreement to secure public transport contributions to enhancing the public transport provision in and around the site, and the applicants are acceptable. We consider it meets the tests. Subject to those stipulations, we're recommending the application be approved, Chairman.
Thank you, Aaron.
Anything else to add at this stage?
We have a speaker, Ms Wilson, who's the agent. You'll have a bit longer than 3 minutes because there are 2.
Okay.
So I'll be a bit flexible on the 3 minutes
I
if
think
you
we
need
can probably do it. I appreciate that. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee today. My name is Melissa Wilson of Lichfield, and we're the planning consultants who act on behalf of the applicant for lodges. I'm addressing both the Phase 1 hybrid application and the associated amenity area application, Apex Park. I note the planning officer recommends these applications for approval. The applicant fully supports both recommendations for the following reasons. Firstly, the Phase 4 site benefits from an allocation EC7 in the Advanced Draft Part 2 local plan, which supports the development of the site for B-class uses as an extension to Apex Park. The Lodges welcomes this allocation and considers that the development represents substantial investment in Daventry that will generate significant economic benefits. Excuse me. Secondly, the Lodge is delighted to have entered into an agreement with Cummings to occupy the unit in Area A of the site and retain one of the biggest employers in the region. The development of this unit will enable Cummings to consolidate their existing operations and further invest in Daventry Town. Now, Cummings is keen to get on site later this year to start building and hope to be in operation towards the end of next year, early 2021. Thirdly, Prologis has undertaken extensive pre-application consultation with officers, consultees and the local community in the form of a public exhibition and worked hard to provide an appropriate and attractive development at Apex Park. The local engagement process in liaison with Bournemouth Parish Council and Daventry Town Council has allowed opportunity for discussion on the proposal, and Prologis welcomes the support it's had from the parish and the town council, and their comments have been incorporated into the final design, and this is reflected in both the landscaping scheme on the Phase 4 site and the remodelling of the adjacent amenity area. The Phase 4 site will be extensively landscaped on its outward-facing boundaries with significant new tree planting to both mitigate the impacts and provide an attractive and formal landscape corridor. There's a new footpath which will run through this corridor, providing public access around the development between the existing right-of-way and to the amenity area. Fourthly, Prologis has invested in Apex Park for over 20 years now. Their existing buildings are fully leased and provide logistics facilities for major employers such as JD Wetherspoons, Wincanton and Hellman, and currently support in excess of 800 jobs. With the proposed development of Apex 4 and the proposed rebuild at the garden facility, which is subject to a separate application, they'll be creating a modern logistics space to support a further potential 800 jobs. And finally, the officer's report clearly summarises the issues related to this application. It reviews the EIA content and concludes that all relevant environmental issues have been assessed and appropriately dealt with. The proposals have been comprehensively prepared, thoroughly assessed and found to be acceptable by the planning officer. Taking all relevant matters into account, particularly the obligations and the conditions which are to be imposed, it's considered that both this application and the application to enhance the amenity area are acceptable and should be approved. I therefore request that the recommendations of the very comprehensive report before you are accepted and upon permission is granted for both applications. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. There are two local members. One's not here, but he's made some comments, so I'll tell you what he said. Councillor Ritchie, he supports both applications as long as the officer's conditions go with it, that is stated in the papers. Right, the other local member is Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I was very pleased to read this report on this particular application. I'm quite impressed by the way they're dealing with this, proposed to deal with the site on different levels in terms of site A and site B. All in all, it will provide employment and it will safeguard employment, and we all have a responsibility to promote economic development and safeguard employment for the community. So I'm quite happy to propose that we take officers' advice on this one.
This will be site A we're talking about just now.
Site A.
The first application.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have a second? Yeah. I'll go to another Daventry member, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, this is what it is. It is a quite big shed on the outside of Daventry at the end of the day, but the area is designated as for that industrial use, so there's already big buildings there. I think this is good news for Daventry, with it being a coming site and consolidating their two warehouse sites into one. I think it's primarily designed to actually feed the main manufacturing site with the parts and the shipments. So all in all, it's actually good, and I do think that the mitigating measures are probably as good as we'd ever get on anything on this. So yeah, I think we have to say yes to this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Wesley. Councillor Robertson.
I'd like to reinforce that. It's a magnificent application. They've gone to town on this. As you might expect with a developer like Prologis, they've got a huge amount of investment in this area, and this is no exception to that. Particularly linked with Cummins, who we've already heard, big employer in the town, and about to be bigger. So I fully support it.
Thank you. If there's no more comments, we're talking on the first application now, which is 0366. We have a proposal the application be approved, which has been seconded. All those agreed, please show. Yes, it's completely unanimous. Thank you. And now I need a proposal for the second one now. Councillor James?
The amenity area.
Yes, do you want me to say anything about this particular?
Propose approval.
Yes,
Right.
just propose it for approval.
And again, Councillor, you will second.
Yeah, I think let's second that.
Right. Councillor Wesley seconds it. Anybody wish to speak on that? Right, all those in favour of that proposal, please show.
Unanimous again?
Again, unanimous. Members of the public, it doesn't usually happen like this. Looks like rubber stamping so far, but...
No, but if it's well done.
So both applications are approved.
Just goes to show how well the officers have done their job. They have, yeah.
Right, the next application is in Crick and it's 0524.
You'll see from the report, this property was the subject of an earlier application which was refused on delegated powers. This application has been brought to committee at the request of a local district council. It's a listed building application. It involves a property that is in a prominent location close to the centre of the village. It is a listed building. And therefore the necessary requirements to have regard to the impact on the heritage asset have to be taken into account and not treated lightly. The application involves two elements really. Replacement of ground and first floor windows on the front elevation, but also the replacement of UPVC windows that were installed to the rear without the benefit of listed building consent. These weren't installed by the current owners of the property, I hasten to add, but were installed by the previous owners. That said, the current owners and the current applicant was advised of the need to regularise that unauthorised work. I'm glad to see that eventually the current application is supposed to deal with that. So we'll deal with the simple bit first. The replacement of the UPVC windows to the rear is to be considered an enhancement of the heritage asset in terms of replacing what were totally unacceptable units with revised ones. That said, the rear elevation doesn't retain, the windows certainly don't retain any of the historic fabric of the building, and therefore officers are comfortable that the solution being offered by the applicant is acceptable in this instance because there's no evidence of any historic fabric existing in the rear of the building. That said, we cannot issue a split decision on the listed building application, which brings me to the more contentious element, which is the front elevation of the building. As I understand it, the top level windows have all been repaired and brought up to speed. So the application relates to the first floor, so the middle row, and the ground floor windows. Really, the crux of the argument is whether or not the economies of replacing these windows completely, so all historic fabric, regardless of its condition, is to be removed and replaced with wholly new double glazed units, is acceptable in terms of the heritage asset. That's the crux of the argument, and whether or not the cost of that, which the applicant judges to be more economically viable, outweighs the need to retain existing historic fabric that's still there. There isn't any argument about the condition of the windows. Yes, the windows are in a bad state of repair. Yes, the windows, some elements of them will require quite significant repair. but the issue is whether or not you look to try and obtain the last remaining parts of the historic fabric over and above sort of seeing the wholesale replacement of the windows themselves. The second issue is the classic issue of double glazing versus single glazing. So you have currently single glazed units on the front elevation with some secondary glazing to the rear. The applicant is proposing to replace with high-tech new double glazing, ultra thin, which he considers will provide both thermal insulation and noise insulation, but also together with the other considerations he asked you to take into account, is a better approach than a long term for the building and the comfort of the inhabitants of the building. Conservation officer, as you'll see in the report, takes quite a firm view on double glazing, fundamentally in terms of the principles of installing it. Not because of visual issues, but because, as she says, in architectural reasons. These are historic buildings, it is historic fabric, and the question is whether or not you should replace those, the ties back to the evolution of the building, whether or not you should replace those with modern double glazing is something that, in our view, should be resisted fundamentally. And there isn't a case to be made because it's not the way to do things. There's going to be an argument about whether secondary glazing is appropriate to double glazing. Our view is that secondary glazing is just as efficient, both thermally and in terms of noise insulation, than the double glazed units. So, if we put it in the round, what we would say is that the proposal has some merit to it in terms of the rear elevation, but on balance, the benefits that are accrued from, well, first of all, there is harm being caused to this building because you are removing all of the historic fabric across the front elevation in terms of the ground and first floor windows and replacing it with modern windows, albeit on a sort of like-for-like basis, and that causes harm. The Conservation Officer advises that is less than substantial harm, and in those situations you have to weigh the harm against the public benefits of the proposal. Our view is that the public benefits do not outweigh the harm, and whilst we recognise the steps being taken to the rear elevation, on the whole we take the view that the proposed alterations to the front don't meet the tests, and accordingly we're recommending that the application be refused, Chairman.
Thank you, Eamon. We have two speakers, Mrs. James from the Parish Council.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Jill Jameson from Crick Parish Council. The Parish Council have decided to support this application. Northgate House stands at the centre of the village and is a house of importance. Over the past 10 to 15 years, it has slipped into a state of severe disrepair. In fact, the Parish Council wrote to the previous owners on at least 2 occasions to ask them to remove slates which had slipped from the roof and lodged in the gutter and posed a threat to pedestrians below. Vegetation had penetrated through the lower windows and was growing on the inside walls of the house, and the front door was almost inaccessible because it was so overgrown with brambles. The whole house was in an almost derelict state. The new owners are trying to sympathetically restore the house to its former glory. The Parish Council recently received an email from Councillor Frost entitled Climate Emergency. In it he asks us to consider ways in which we could try and take steps to reduce our carbon footprint. If I could just read you an extract. Most emissions in the district are generated by residents and local businesses. We therefore hope to consider ways in which Daventry District Council can promote action by others. Here we have an opportunity to put measures into effect which will support this initiative. The double glazing which is being suggested is of a design and high quality that it is indistinguishable from single glazing and will enable the owners to reduce their consumption of heating oil and consequently their emissions of greenhouse gases. This is being resisted by the Council's Conservation Officer, who states in the refusal notice, the Council's Conservation Officer takes a firm stance on the issue of introducing double glazing to existing or replacement windows in listed buildings. Double glazing will almost be resisted. It is important that a consistent and robust approach is maintained when assessing and determining similar applications. Here we have a real dilemma. These are large windows, and I'm sure that the introduction of hardly noticeable double glazing units will have a considerable effect on the conservation of energy. On the other hand, the advice of the Conservation Officer is to resist the introduction of any form of double glazing. The other issue we have to consider is whether the windows themselves are beyond repair. We essentially have two different opinions. Those who have substantial experience of repairing windows in historic buildings and believe that the windows in their current state are beyond repair. They are described in the Heritage Impact Statement as having severe rot, bodged repairs, and do not fit well. On the other hand, the Conservation Officer believes that they should be repaired, although it is acknowledged that less than substantial harm would be done in NPPF terms if they were replaced. Therefore, I would ask you to permit these windows to be replaced with high-quality double glazing, and that we try and make a small contribution to climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Gidley, applicant. Thank you.
Good evening. My family moved into Northgate House in April last year, and we have lived in Crick for over 20 years. The house has suffered years of neglect, and repairs have never been done properly. We are passionate about the restoration of the house. Despite our property development credentials, this is not a sound investment, but a purchase from the heart, as an incredibly challenging project for us to live in as a family home. We like its quirkiness and crooked doors and worn steps that add to its character, but these features remain functional. We restored the leaded glass windows to the top floor as advised by the Conservation Officer. Whilst missing some ironworks, they are likely to be original windows from when an additional story was added. We had to replace one window, but nobody can tell which one, including officers. The remaining windows to the front are not functional. Some cannot be opened, and most are rotten with structural defects. If we could keep them, we would, but all the numerous joiners and the heritage experts agree that any repairs would be short-term and just be putting off their inevitable replacement. The loss of historic fabric is a shame, but these windows cannot be original due to the size of the glass. At best, some of the outer frames might have survived, but taking into account the amount of rot, spliced in base rails and jambs and filler, there is little historic fabric left. This has to be weighed up against the significant benefits of substantially more attractive replica timber windows with all casements matching, unlike present, that will last for at least the next 60 years and thus preserve the whole building in the long term. The Conservation Officer takes an uncompromising stance on the use of slim double glazing units, except to the rear of the house, but the technology exists now that these are virtually indistinguishable from single glazing, and I've brought a sample to show you. Historic England's guidance states that it's possible with replacement windows to introduce slim profile double glazing without harming the significance of the listed building. We agree with our heritage expert of the clear additional benefit of removing ugly modern secondary glazing that detracts from its historic beauty. With climate change being the world's most important issue, we should make the house as energy efficient as possible. The proposed windows will reduce heat loss by 77%. Currently, we literally heat the streets with oil bills at £500 a month during the winter, which is not sustainable. To correct the officer's report, secondary glazing is ineffective in our case, as the gap between the glass panes is too large. Northgate House has also in fact been in institutional use, and its sheer scale of over 5,000 square feet and large windows means energy conservation will have a very real public benefit. In accordance with paragraph 196 of the NPPF, It is considered that the benefits of the application far outweigh the limited harm. These benefits include securing the optimum viable use of Northgate House as a dwelling through the restoration of the whole house, substantial energy efficient gains, and replacing 18 old UV windows that harm its appearance. We are proud of the listed building status of Northgate House and are determined to sympathetically restore this landmark building for future generations to enjoy, but we can only deliver this if the application is approved. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Right, local member, Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. Well, we've heard eloquently the reasons that this has been called to the committee's attention, and it was I that asked it to be called before it. I feel that this is a straightforward argument between double glazing or not, and because the windows have already been shown to be effectively not repairable, or repairable only at very great expense, the applicant has got it right. I think when it comes to the parish council who support this application, they're the people that live there, and surely their view must be taken into consideration. Now, it's very difficult because this flies in the face of officers' advice, and it's always difficult to go against officers' advice. They are, after all, professional, and they usually know what they're doing. In fact, they always know what they're doing. But in this case, I believe that the harm, well, it is harm, of course, because the way that the legislation is written, you do anything to a listed building, it causes harm. It does cause less than substantial harm, which is a confusing thing to say, because that means harm, the same as any kind of harm. But, okay, so it's on balance. Now, I've got to say that, in my opinion, the balance is the opposite way around. As simple as that. I support this application. I believe that, and listen to all the arguments, I believe that it's actually, the benefits outweigh the less than substantial harm rather than the other way around. So I would therefore like to propose that this committee go against officers' advice on this one occasion and approve the application.
Thank you. Yeah,
Just to you,
hold on a second.
the requirement is to weigh it against the public benefits, not simple.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, I'll elaborate.
Clarify what the public benefits are in terms of outweighing.
The applicant has already said that he's heating the street to the bus route. I expect they're quite pleased with heating the bus route there. I don't know about that. Really, the public benefit is, of course, the reduction in carbon footprint. That's a public benefit, in my opinion. And I don't know whether officers would agree with that or not, but I believe it is a public benefit. Also, the look of the thing. It's on a public street, a very well used public street at that, and this will not detract from the looks, it will improve the looks.
Thank you. Anyway, I've got to the point of saying, do you have a seconder? Do you have a seconder? Councillor James.
Yes, Joan, when I first read this report, I thought, oh no, another one of these again. And I thought, well, I suppose we're going to have to go on with officers' advice on it. But then when I see the property itself, and I look at that, I think I've seen a few buildings like that in my time. Notably, the old offices of J.L. Wilson Apartments, Warhill and Charles Surratt, and Shrew London. And I've seen buildings like that in the centre of Leicester. Did not have windows like that. So clearly they are not the original windows at all. In fact, I'm minded to think, I could be wrong on this, they were probably sash windows, opening sash windows at one time in that room. I don't know. May have been many, many years ago, but they are certainly not the original style. Now, if, and we've seen an example of what is proposed here, if all that old rubbishy windows were taken out and put in, even in that particular style, which I don't think is necessarily compatible with the age of that facade, it would look a million times better. It really would. It would enhance and improve the appearance of that building. And surely, we've got to look at not just the question of energy saving, which is a valuable and is a material factor, I think, but the appearance of it to the public, and that's the benefit. But it's a lovely facade, and with new windows in it, the right sort of windows, it could be very, very attractive. Really nice building. And so I'm more than happy to second that.
Thank you. Before I go to the other local member, go back to Aidan, you wish to make a comment?
Yeah, just that there isn't any dispute that these are all original windows, etc. That said, they are part of the historic development of the building itself, and therefore they are what contributes to its significance as a historic building. Simply, what we are saying to you is that there is a balance to be struck about trying to retain, and there's a dispute here about how much of the original historic fabric exists and whether or not you wish to retain that. Members, you're perfectly entitled to come to you and say, right, okay, we hear what you say, get rid of all the historic fabric and replace it with modern double glazed units. You're entitled to come to that view. But what we say as officers is that the case here is that you have a historic building that has changed over time, but the important thing is whether or not you wish, you want to retain that evidence of how that building has evolved. Yes, there is a need for repairs. Yes, there's a need for a programme of repairs. Yes, it's going to cost money, but people who take on listed buildings don't do it. They shouldn't be doing it lightly. They are custodians of those buildings. Those buildings will long outlast us. So the question you have to ask yourself is whether or not you want to see wholesale loss of historic fabric rather than repair. That's the view you are coming to. But somebody saying, well, those windows aren't the original windows, therefore get rid of those. I think what you have to say is, well, those windows tell the story of the building in terms of how it's developed. Do we want to keep them as part of the historic fabric of the building, or do we want to see them cutting it up?
Thank you. Councillor Lyons.
Thank you, Chairman. May I first of all, before I move on to the application, congratulate you and the committee on such a speedy dispatch of this evening's agenda.
I thought you were a bit late, to be quite honest.
Yes, call me on the hop, Chairman. But very good. Members, I ask you to approve this application. It's sometimes difficult, and I think Councillor Robertson has already said this, to resist officers' recommendations, and the more so in finally balanced matters of listed buildings. Northgate House is a substantial building at the centre of Crick at a significant crossroads. The only jarring element in its historic setting is the undistinguished co-op next door. As the fabric of the front windows of Northgate House is severely damaged by poor past repair and the passage of time, careful replacement to the original design is only sensible. Together with thin double glazing, which is possible and acceptable, this refurbishment would make the house currently hardly fit for habitation, a comfortable and energy-efficient dwelling. While private benefit is not a material factor, environmental improvement and enhancing energy standards should be a consideration in your decision. Moreover, this refurbishment and repair will add much to the street scene. This important historical setting and street scene can be enhanced and retained. There is no doubt that the public benefit thus would accrue is greater than any loss or significant harm to the currently degraded historical asset of Northgate House. Members, again, I urge you to approve this application.
Thank you. Councillor Irving Swift is next, followed by Councillor Wesley.
Often I say I live in a listed house, and our officer knows my windows were roughly in that state. at one point, and I had the window replaced. Now, I know also that for an officer who represents listed building, it's heartbreaking to see that windows are left to deteriorate to that point. But the applicant is not the cause of the deterioration. So therefore, I have a lot of sympathy with the applicant. Now, if we are minded to go against officer advice, I would like to make sure that there is some condition to the windows, and because we saw the windows, but also of the wood, the replacement wood that is used, because the problem with windows that are painted and painted and painted, very often you have seepage underneath, and that rots the windows. So when we put, if we are minded to go against officer advice, I would like, if it's possible, to put a condition about the quality of the wood, of the replacement of the window. And for all my money, I had Akoya wood, and a lot of listed buildings now use Akoya wood, which is more expensive, but the advantage is it lasts for 60 years.
Thank you. Councillor Wesley.
Chair, I think everything's been covered that I wanted to say. I want not to say anything else. Thank you.
Anybody else put their hand up? Councillor Robertson again.
Just want to sort of dispel the requirement for, what was the word again?
Akoya.
Akoya. I don't know whether this is the kind of wood you have in mind. No idea. I think these days, you know, there are certain warranties expected of window manufacturers, and I don't know whether that really should be required as a condition.
Okay. Any other contributions from anybody? If not, we have a proposal the application be approved. All it's been seconded. All those in favour, please show. Those against? Well, the application is,
Can we conditions to the condition?
yeah, we need conditions.
Chairman, can I come back? My first and foremost, given what's been said this evening, and the applicant is clearly keen to get on with the process, but also given that there is an authorised work to rear elevation, that the condition should, rather than require the works to commence within 3 years of the date of your decision, they should be completed in their entirety within 3 years of the date of its commission. The applicant is entitled to appeal that condition. We don't like that condition, but I think in the circumstances whereby they judge there's a clear need, which is what they've said, there's a clear need to replace the front elevation, we would say there's a clear need to regularise the unauthorised work to the rear elevation. And we think that 3 years would be sufficient time to allow that programme of works to take place.
I think that's reasonable.
If members are agreeing to that, my suggestion would be that the condition would require those works to be carried out and completed in a 3-year period. The applicant is perfectly entitled then to apply to vary that if they feel that is onerous or acceptable, but I think that should be there as a starting point. As regards to other conditions, then again I would be suggesting that materials, joinery details and painting of the windows would have to be agreed in terms of the details. We do have details of joinery, etc., which have just been accepted, so it may well be that those are tied up with conditions tied into the details that are listed. But that would be the range of conditions I think that officers would be reasonable in the circumstances. But forward to you, Chairman. If members feel there's any other conditions.
Okay. Are you happy with those conditions for a start?
I am, certainly.
Right. Have you got any more conditions? So you all agree the conditions just stated by the officer?
Chair.
Sorry? Yes, we have our conservation officer sitting behind you, so she served the debate and the support she was given. Rachel, would you like to comment on any conditions you think are appropriate now it's been approved?
No, I think that's straightforward. It was the need to get the unauthorised windows at the back replaced as soon as possible. And yes, joinery details have been submitted, and there's quite a lot of information in the application, but I think we've given up a couple of conditions together that just tie that in. And things like window furniture and stuff like that we'll need to do. But yeah, the finishing of the windows will be really important because they're such important elements on that elevation. And I'm sure that will be fairly straightforward to do. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, so the committee's happy with all of that then? All right? Okay, the application is approved. Right, the last item on the agenda is an enforcement. Right, over to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Chairman. The site subject to the unauthorised work is to build east of St Andrew's Church in Ardenworth. The church itself is a Grade 2 star listed building. Planning Commission has been reviewed previously for an access track, and it was dismissed at appeal due to the impact on the designated heritage assets, St Andrew's Church and the Old Manor, which is a Grade 2 listed building. The access track was for access, or is proposed as the owner would like to think, for an emergency access to the Old Manor. It came to the attention that works had commenced on the sites and the officers visited the site. It became immediately obvious, as you will see in the pictures, this is pre-works, as we've got some post-works as well, which is clear that engineering works have commenced to create a roadway access track to construct the Old Manor. That's an existing access, that photo, to the site itself. Members will note the comments of the owner and agents within the lake representations. Although there is a difference between the material being used now and what was proposed originally, it is still considered that the further works would still have a detrimental impact. You still see the roadway pretty much by the amount of it's being used. As you can see in late reps, it says it's between 2 and 3 days, 2 to 3 times a day, which will ensure that you can see car passing marks on it, tyre marks. The owner considers the work does not require planning permission as it is not development. Section 55 of the Town and Country Planning Act sets out the meaning of development. It states development means carrying out of building, engineering, mining or other operations in, on, over or under land, or making of material change in the use of any buildings or other land. And you can see by the photos it is clearly engineering as announced as development. The owner and agent consider the impact is reduced due to the material being used, but officers still consider that there will be an impact. The owner considers it's required for emergency vehicles to access to the site, but however, the site has an existing access off Great Oxton Road. Overall, it is considered it is expedient to serve an enforcement notice to require the land returned to its former state and to serve an immediate stop notice. It would be appropriate to ensure that the stop notice is issued at the same time to prevent any further work to harm designated heritage assets, hence the immediate stop notice.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Catherine. Members, local member for a start.
Well, it's always very difficult because when it's in the village where you live and there are new neighbors because Lady Isabel, who lived there for many, many years, had another track a bit further, but that was with her son, and it was a very different proposal at the time. Now, the owner have wanted a site close to the churchyard and put a planning application. That planning application was refused, and after went on appeal, and it was refused on appeal. So I don't want to go into the local issue, but more in the general term of planning. Also, the owner of the manor said that emergency services need that approach. Well, if she needs the approach for emergency services, I need the approach too. So I will ask for another track to my house because we share the track at the back.
It's probably a good idea to clarify.
Yes. So when you have the manor, you see a little road at the bottom. Bosworth's house is at the top there. So we share, it's a road, and in fact, the previous owner have had two planning application at the bottom here, as the blue barn and so on. So that is a road that deserves our house plus the manor.
Is that a private road?
That is a private road, still owned by the Guinnesses IBDs. So therefore, and at the back, you have that is the entrance of the manor, and it's a 5-bar gate. So therefore, emergency services can access the manor. We tend to agree that years ago it was to access via the manor, via the middle of the field, and via the back. And in fact, everybody used the back of the manor to enter the manor. Now, I will go into the general remit of our committee. I don't want to be personally very involved, but for me, when you have an appeal and who goes with the officer advice, and people think that they can do whatever they want, it creates now the village is a maze. So I will, for this reason, I will go with officer advice, because otherwise, if we agree that to go ahead with no enforcement, we open the road or the gate to a lot of people, because when they say it will not change, what you see will change, because they didn't have an agricultural access from that point originally, and then they have put a cattle breed. So for my view, I will go with officer advice, and I will listen to what the committee has to say.
Thank you. Do you have a second, sir? Councillor Champlin.
Thank you, Chair. I was amazed at some of the late representations that were presented to us earlier today. Some of the arguments put forward by the applicant as to why it was necessary for this access to be there, because he seemed to think that the emergency services wouldn't know how to reach his property. I'm quite sure they do, because they're not stupid. They spend a lot of time looking into particularly places like this to make sure now how would we get there. And as to the 5-bar gate not being wide enough for a fire engine or other emergency vehicle, that's also spurious nonsense. It's specious, in fact, because it takes an awful lot to stop a fire engine. If there's a gate post, they'll just go through it. So I don't accept any of his arguments as to why this track is necessary. And I would like to endorse what my colleague has just said about the flouting of planning law and not just the local planning authority, but an inspector on behalf of the Secretary of State that said that this shouldn't happen. And to go ahead with it after that is just absolutely unacceptable. And that's why I'm seconding the proposal that we go ahead with these two recommendations from the officer's report, and that we issue an enforcement notice and a stop notice at the same time.
Right. I've got to say, what gets me is the fact that the applicant says it's not development, so why the hell did it go to appeal? An inspector from Bristol consider it as a development and refused it. If it's not development, I find that... Anyway.
We're just going to clarify.
We're just going to clarify.
So this is the property, and this is the existing access to the property.
Yes.
And
That's the old.
this is the old access that
It's all
this
old,
property
yes.
no longer has access to. And this is the route.
No, that's the other side.
Through there. So this is the route, as per the planning application that we produced, that the work started on. So that would give a direct drive on this road. So just so everyone's clear.
Okay.
Over the picture. It is basically that.
Right, Councillor Wesley, then Councillor James.
I mean, I think I absolutely agree with the proposer and seconder on this. But, you know, I think it's just such a shame that it's got... I think if that material was actually proposed originally, I might have just said yes to that. I may have done, but the fact remains that you've had a planning permission refused, an appeal refused, and then to go and flounce it is just outrageous. And I think we have to put every other consideration aside and say that we should stop it. It's just wrong.
Yeah, the change.
Certainly affects the setting of that church, anyway. Catherine?
In considering enforcement of this action, we also have to consider what's being proposed. Yes, we admit it is very different material, but as officers still consider that there will still be an impact to the designated heritage asset regardless of the material being proposed. So hence why we've already
Okay. Councillor James.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's not a unique case, this one. I remember, it must be getting on for 20 years now, when a local farmer in Everton proposed putting a track across the field immediately in front of St Mary's Church to get access to his farm. He'd already had an existing gated access off Bethel Lane, but he refused planning permission for that. And it went to appeal, and the appeal was turned down as well. So, you know, it's similar, and it's mainly because of the impact it would have had on the heritage asset. So I assume that if planning permission was applied for that again, it would get turned down, because that's acting consistently. Now, Daventry District Council doesn't have a reputation for being heavy-handed, and enforcement is always something that's not taken lightly. But I think this is an instance where they will have really no alternative but to take enforcement action in this particular case and put the land back to where it was before. And that's regrettable because the applicants obviously spent a lot of money, but that's life.
I don't believe any member of this committee is going to vote against this proposal to resolve these two items. Right, we have a proposal that these two items be resolved, which has been seconded. All those in favour, please show.
That is unanimous.
Unanimous. Thank you, committee. Very good. And I guess the time is 7:30. We're not far off.